The cabin door nearly flew off its hinges, rattling every window in the frame. Now, if you've never had a 6-foot-tall woman in pressed khakis storm into your dining room, trust me, you're not missing much. There she stood, Patricia Harrington, president of the Pine Ridge HOA, lips curled like she'd just tasted something rotten, and an index finger already cocked and loaded in my direction. My dinner guests, forks in midair, salmon halfway to their mouths, froze like kids caught sneaking a beer from the fridge. Nobody moved, not even a breath, waiting for Patricia's next explosion about noise, or parking, or whatever HOA rule she'd decided I'd broken this week. But the second her gaze landed on Daniel Morrison, yes, that Daniel Morrison, the state attorney general, sitting right there at my table with his fork halfway to his mouth, something shifted in the air. He set his fork down slow, dabbed his lips with a napkin, and looked up at her with this lawyerly calm I've only ever seen in courtroom dramas. One eyebrow raised, like he'd practiced that look in front of a mirror, and for the first time in 3 years, Patricia didn't say a single word. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just silence. Let me back up a second. I'm Robert Sullivan, and I own this little lakeside cabin. Been in my family since my great-grandfather hammered in the first nail back in 1922, long before Pine Ridge was a twinkle in some developer's eye. 5 acres of private land, smack outside the HOA's reach, at least on paper. But trying to explain that to Patricia Harrington is like trying to teach a cat to swim. Patricia moved in about 5 years ago, ran for HOA president before she'd even finished unpacking, and somehow won by a landslide, promising to restore order and beautify the neighborhood. What she actually did was turn the HOA into her own personal fiefdom. She'd measure your grass with a ruler, fine you if you're garbage. Kim was out after sunrise, and once charged the Myers kid $300 for drawing rainbows on the sidewalk. And my cabin, sitting just outside the official boundary, was her white whale. It started 6 months ago. Patricia insisted my property, just because it could be seen from the edge of Pine Ridge, was hurting community values. First, I got noise complaints, supposedly. My Saturday night grill sessions were audible half a mile through thick forest. Then, reports of my trash somehow blowing over the creek. Last month, she decided I must be running an illegal rental. Even though the only guests I ever had were deer and the occasional friend from out of town. That weekend was different, though. James, my old college roommate, had come to visit, brought along Mark, our old band's drummer, and Daniel Morrison, who used to captain our debate team and now happens to be the state attorney general. It was just 5 guys, some grilled salmon, cold beer, and that lazy golden evening light you only get on the lake. We were maybe a little loud, lots of laughing, a few toasts to old stories, but nothing worth calling the cavalry over. Still, Patricia had been watching with her binoculars, no doubt counting every car in my driveway, and apparently decided this was her moment to save civilization. I was serving the main course when I heard it, her angry heels crunching up the gravel. Usually she'd knock, hard enough to scare the birds for a mile, but this time, the door just exploded open. She barged in, clipboard waving, decked out in her Pine Ridge HOA polo and that self-righteous frown, cheeks red, voice shaking. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she snapped, already holding up her precious clipboard like it was a badge. "I have documented evidence of multiple vehicles, an unauthorized gathering under HOA Regulation 7.3, and I have reason to believe you're operating an illegal short-term rental." She cut herself off mid-sentence. Her eyes found Daniel. James froze, mid-sip. Mark didn't even breathe. Daniel just leaned back, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of polite curiosity I imagine he uses in court when someone's clearly lying. Then, in that smooth, even voice of his, he said, "Ma'am, could you explain why you just entered this man's home without permission?" Patricia's hand trembled. She glanced at the state seal on Daniel's jacket, draped over the chair. "This is HOA business," she stammered. "I have the authority. Do you have a warrant?" Daniel cut in. "Are you a law enforcement officer?" Patricia faltered. "Well, no, but I'm the HOA president, and this property is affecting." Daniel stood up, all 6'3" of him, filling the room with the kind of authority you can't buy at Staples. "Ma'am, what's your full name?" "Patricia. Patricia Harrington." She was shrinking by the syllable. "Ms. Harrington," Daniel continued, voice cold as lake water. Are you aware that entering someone's home without consent is criminal trespass? That's a Class A misdemeanor. Up to a year in jail, $5,000 fine. Patricia went pale. But the HOA regulations, HOA rules don't override state law, Daniel said, cutting her off like a judge dropping the gavel. And as I understand it, Robert's property isn't even under your HOA's jurisdiction? I finally spoke up. That's right. This cabin's been here 60 years longer than Pine Ridge. Daniel nodded. So, you entered private property, outside your legal reach, without permission, and interrupted a private gathering. Do you understand that's grounds for arrest? Her clipboard slipped from her fingers, papers flying, photos of my property, lists of violations in neat, frantic handwriting. I was just trying to protect our community, she whispered. By breaking the law? Daniel asked, pulling out his phone, face unreadable. Robert, you said you have cameras? Yep, record 24/7. Audio too. Daniel nodded. Ms. Harrington, I suggest you leave. And I'd advise you to contact an attorney before you say another word. Patricia bent down, hands shaking so badly she could barely gather her papers. Leave those, Daniel said sharply. They're evidence now. She straightened, tears in her eyes, and stumbled out, heels scraping the floor. Then the frantic crunch of gravel as she ran to her car. The cabin was dead quiet, just the crackle of the fire, the distant sound of tires spinning away. Finally, James let out a long, slow whistle. Well, he said, that was something. Daniel, cool as ice, just went back to his salmon. Robert, I'll need a copy of that footage. And we'll talk about her pattern of harassment. I nodded and handed him a folder I'd been keeping. Months' worth of Patricia's complaints, her creepy photos from the road, threatening emails about imaginary violations. Daniel leafed through, frowning deeper. With every page. This isn't just trespass. This is targeted harassment. Has she done this to anyone else? Oh yeah, Mark said, finally relaxing. My cousin lives inside Pine Ridge. Nobody there even puts up Christmas lights without Patricia's written approval. Daniel made notes, his lawyer mode fully activated. Robert, you'll need to file a formal complaint first thing tomorrow. This behavior is way out of line. The rest of dinner was subdued. We tried to laugh it off, but the tension lingered. After everyone left, Daniel hung back. Sorry you had to deal with that, he said, but I'm glad I was here. People like Patricia think a little power means they can steamroll anyone. She's about to learn different. 2 days later, Patricia got an official letter from the Attorney General's office. Investigation for trespass, harassment, abuse of authority. It stated, in plain English, if she set foot on my property again, she'd be arrested on the spot. That same afternoon, chaos hit the Pine Ridge HOA board meeting. My neighbor Tom called, nearly in tears from laughing. 3 board members quit on the spot. The rest demanded Patricia step down. She tried to protest, talking about protecting property values, but the board's lawyer laid it out. She'd put every one of them at risk for criminal charges. They voted her out. Patricia Harrington was done as HOA president before dinner. But that wasn't the end. The AG's office turned up even more. Patricia had entered at least 4 other homes for inspection, issued fake fines, and even pocketed some of the money herself. 3 weeks after she busted into my cabin, Patricia stood in court, gray suit, smaller than I'd ever seen her, holding onto her lawyer like she might collapse. The judge didn't mince words. You bullied, harassed, and trespassed against your neighbors. You undermined the very community you claim to protect. This is unacceptable. Patricia nodded, barely whispering. The sentence, 6 months in jail, suspended, 2 years probation, a $5,000 fine, 100 hours of community service, and banned from any HOA board for life. When the judge read the terms, Patricia looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Her reign of terror, over. The old guard finally gone. And as I left the courthouse, Daniel clapped me on the shoulder and said, people like her always think they're above the law, until the law comes knocking. So, let me ask you, was that justice, or did she get off easy? Have you ever tangled with an HOA dictator like Patricia? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your stories. What's your take on real justice, and who should really be policing the so-called protectors in our neighborhoods? If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me, where are you watching from? I want to hear all about your HOA war stories. And hey, thanks for supporting the fight for real. Honest community.